Okay, now welcome to the fourth of our on-site videos. I'll just track back to put us into a location that we can survey what's been going on. Now what you're looking at the moment is a variation on the single-story framing house that we've been looking at previously. It's essentially the same form of construction. You can see there's lightweight timber framing that's going up, that we'll have a look at that, which we'll have a look at. And it is, if you have downloaded and had a look at the drawings associated with this variation, uh, uh, essentially the same type of building. Okay, but what we're going to be doing in looking at the building today is to examine some of the issues to do with timber framing practice generally, and to think through a few kind of ideas about qualities of buildability and consistency in the process itself. Now, if we do a little kind of visual inspection of what's going on at the moment, we can see that everything is pretty much as before with the single framing variation. The masonry is just starting to be undertaken. There's much of the timber framing remains the same. There's some masonry being undertaken at the rear of the property, masonry construction. But what the change is, of course, is that we now have this second story. Okay, and by looking at the drawings, we can see that there's been a change in the planning arrangement. That there is now a stairs, and a room is gone, and there's now a set of stairs running up to the upper floor. Okay, but it seems to be consistent with what is on the drawing, certainly the ground floor. Now, of course, in real life it would be impossible to change a job midway like this. You would have to go through council and apply all over again for design approval and the associated building permits. But just for the purpose of us being able to look at this variation, we've made it for you here. Okay, now let's set up the stairs and see what's occurring up above. Okay, now just a little tip: when you're approaching the stairs in this particular model, okay, you'll need to hit W. Sorry, not W, the spacebar, as you hit W in order to get onto the stair itself. Okay. Now if we come up and we have a look at the framing that we can see here, you can see that the floor or the ceiling joists in the previous instance are now becoming the floor joists, and that the wall framing for the upper level is sitting directly on top of those joists. This is to create what's called a platform floor. Okay, it's different from cut-in or an in-situ concrete slab, which would of course require a very, very different type of structural solution in order to work. Okay, so we'll walk around. We can have a bit of a look up here, and we can see that essentially, as I said before, it's the same type of construction. We've got what appear to be pinus radiata pine joists running through across the top of all of the lower floor accommodation, which now, so the ceiling joists for the lower floor now become the floor joists for the upper floor. They perform the same function. We also can see that we have on the floor here what we call some a temporary flooring. This will be put up by the builder in order to just allow people to safely work at an upper level and to store materials, etc. Usually it will be, as I said, a temporary one to be used as necessary, but they might in some instances put in the actual flooring, which is generally would be a particle board sheet, 10, 12, 15 millimeters in thickness, depending on the design, which could then take the floor finishes, things like tiles or carpet or linoleum sheeting perhaps, if you wanted to do that at this kind of upper level. Generally carpet, because it has good acoustic properties. Now, one thing we can also start to look at when we look around here is to think about what you would do when walking up here would be to have a go and see how it felt. And we can do this by walking across the joists now, to see that the structure itself felt that it was stable, and whilst, as I said before, all of the sheeting would need to be in place to get a really true idea of whether things were firm and true. You can get a sense of whether a floor would be bouncy or not just by doing this kind of preliminary check. Now, if there is a sense a feeling that that would be the case, a number of things can be done. You can put in strutting in between the floor joists, so that's a bit like the noggings that run in between the studs, providing kind of stability that way. Sometimes they would do, certainly warehouse construction, they would do timber warehouse construction, they do things like herringbone strutting, which is kind of a cross-straight, cross-shaped bracing that goes between the joists. Alternatively, the design might be that you put in a deeper joist. Okay, so going from maybe a 200 mil deep joist to a 250 mil joist. But of course, one of the problems with that is that you then have differences in heights. Okay, and that becomes really important when you're trying to work out how stairs come up to meet a floor surface. You can imagine if you raised all the flooring in here by 50 mils by putting in deeper joists, there would be an extra height needed to be catered for in the stair. So little incremental things like this become actually quite important in the overall system. What the builder's done, I think, in this instance is just placed some more extra joists in. That performs the same sort of function and will probably, in this instance, be sufficient to stiffen the structure generally. If we look around as well, we can see that apart from that, there is some clear kind of good practice going on. There's doubling up of the studs at corners and at openings. This means that the upper structure will remain fairly rigid, which is good. It's often the case too, if you think about the way in which walls are used, that once you put a door onto one of these openings, doors over the time impart a bit of stress onto the structure because they're continually being pulled, and so you need a little bit of extra strength in that location. Okay, so that's generally just good practice. Now, what is an issue and something that we need to kind of review in relationship to the drawings is what we can see here. The builder's placed a opening to the south in the bedroom up here, which has overlooking issues with the property next door. Now, you'll notice in the design drawings that the window was expected to be in this location, out to the west. Alright. Now that's a problem because you can't build a building which isn't in compliance with the design drawings, and so in this instance the builder would just have to put some extra studs in there, take away that timber framing, and then rebuild it in this location. It's not a huge task, but it's a mistake nonetheless. It needs to be rectified. Okay. So apart from that, everything looks to be generally okay. There's, as we've seen previously, there's a mixture in this instance up here of strap bracing and plush or sheeting, okay, which is being used to strengthen the upper floor. So it all seems to be in relatively good condition. Alright, that just leaves us to do a little bit of a visual inspection around the downstairs area. Okay, as we said before, it all seems to be consistent with what was being built previously. But if we come around and we look at what is occurring around the external perimeter, particularly where this two-story section is, we need to make sure that it's all true with the building line that as agreed by the, as you can see, by the set out of the lower floor framing, and that all seems to be in pretty good shape. Okay, all of those studs are consistent and in line. There's no issues with kind of misalignment, which will allow the outer leaf of blockwork, masonry blockwork, to be built up and complete the external skin. Moving down, however, to about the middle of this wall, we come across a problem. What we can see here, so I'll just move back and have a bit of a better look at it, is that a window opening has been built into the location where the halfway point of the stair is, and you can see the beam carrying the stair running right across where the window would be set in. Now this is a problem for both the designer, who might have left the window in the drawings, and the builder, who's done it without thinking to contact the designer or architect and say, look, we need to change this. There's obviously no point having a window which is obscured by the stair in this fashion. Okay, so that's something which would need to be attended to. Again, as with upstairs, it can be fixed fairly simply just by placing more structure within there and not putting a window in, just doing a normal lining. But it is something that would have to be looked at. Alright, so apart from that, everything seems to be relatively okay. The window down here is consistent with the design, and so there's no need for it to be worried about. Okay, it's still set back sufficiently from the boundary for it to be okay. Alright, so that pretty much concludes where we are with this particular site inspection. I think we found some interesting things to review, and I'll see you guys